Hi guys, Jordan, Stanley Payne, KingdomRealEstate.com. Today we had Bobby Keller call into the show talking about transitioning from being a pilot to real estate semi-full-time and how he needs to raise about $10 million in private capital, how to do that. So we talk about private money, we talk about commercial real estate, and much more. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the show and enjoy.
Hello?
Jimmy John's Freaky Fast Delivery. Can I take your order today, sir?
Jordan, what's up, man?
Hey, buddy. How are you? I love it, dude. Well, welcome to the show. Glad to have you. Sounds like we're talking about maybe some private money and the portfolio, but what's going on?
Well, so I guess let me kind of tell you where I'm at and where I'm wanting to go.
Please. Yep.
Maybe we can find the B, C, D, E, and F. Maybe. I have been doing private money for the better part of 3 years, and have, I would say, done pretty well. I've gone through all of my friends and family, and those that are interested, and those that aren't, they're just, they're not going to be interested.
Mm-hmm.
So I've gone through most of my network of people, and I've got about 1 to 2 million, give or take, just depending on who's interested and what's the amount.
Yeah.
So that kind of vacillates back and forth based on people's living expenses, or if they want to fix something up or buy a car or whatever. So sometimes I have access to those monies, and sometimes I don't. I am wanting to scale it to a larger scale. So I set a very, I think, achievable goal of getting 10 million in private equity. Part of that goal is, one, to have it for my own, just to do my own projects, kind of do what I've been doing with real estate. But I also kind of want to arbitrage that money and invest in other people, specifically, in Ascension, just to kind of start with. And then as that circle kind of expands, to Axiom into the kingdom as well. So
What type of projects are you currently investing in? Like, so sounds like you've got a couple million. What have you done with that money? Single family, multifamily? What do you got going
on? I've done the biggest project I did was a storage unit.
Okay.
That was done in Brooks, Kentucky. That was about 170 unit, a little less than that. That was the acquisition on that was basically 1.2 million. That's the biggest I've done. It's been mostly small, single family, lending on flips or doing flips, and then rehabbing for rentals as well. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Then, dude, what's the goal? I mean, you've got a lot going on. You've done really, really well. A lot of people have never raised any amount of capital. But as far as your portfolio goes, what's the goal with that, man?
I'm wanting to transition into mostly commercial properties. I'm not opposed to single family, but it needs to be bought right.
Yeah.
Right now, I think the market is significantly overbought, and I just, at this point, I'm not even interested unless it's a very, very good deal.
Okay.
I just see people, coming in, paying way more for property than I would, I think is appropriate, and I think that the demand is still there for the single family, and that's what's kind of held it up, at least in my market. But I think at some point, just the way that the economy is working, that is going to eventually fail. I am more interested in the commercial space anyways, just because of where my leanings are. I tend to work better with professionals, and I can negotiate better with them than I can with some of these owners with single-family homes. It's not that I can't, it's just that I tend to do better with that. So that's it. So the focus would be more along the lines of storage units, warehouses, possibly some office buildings, but really sticking to the commercial side of things as opposed to another single-family home, another flip.
Yeah, dude. So there's a couple thoughts here. Number one, the demand for single family will never go away. We're not building enough to keep up with population. The ability to actually buy those properties with interest rates and with, like you mentioned, the economy, inflation, etc., that's only going to continue to get harder and harder. The flip side with commercial, I love commercial. I think it's a great investment. I think it's a great asset class. The only issue with that is the demand for it. So depending on what's going on in the world, depending on what's going on with the economy, it can be a great asset class, or it can really, really struggle. So like if I drive down, like over here in Ohio, if I drive down Whipple, I mean, there's 30, 40, 50 different commercial, property available, office space available. So I would probably stay away from the smaller office space stuff. I'd pick a niche and go really, really heavy into it. You mentioned like warehouse space. The nice thing about that is, depending on what it is, it's going to be a very specific client. It's going to be a very specific need. And a lot of times these people can get locked into 3, 4, 5-year lease. And you can raise that rent legally through the lease every single year. So a lot of times that's a pretty good play. And you're looking at a business, like you mentioned, you're looking at a business versus mom and dad who are looking to buy their first property, or they can't deal with their tenant, anything like that. So I think if you get niched down in commercial, I think it can be a great option. And then I also think that the arbitrage, which for anybody that doesn't know, arbitrage is basically creating a little bit of a gap with your capital. So, maybe Bobby lends or has borrowed at 8% and he's lending at 12%. He just created a 4% gap. That's not a bad way to go, man. At that point, you are the bank. You are playing as a banker. You're going to start operating like a banker. It's not as time intensive as maybe like the single family stuff that you mentioned. You're still working full time, aren't you?
I am, yes, as a high-speed aluminum tube manager.
AKA a pilot. AKA a pilot.
Yes, that's right.
I love it, man.
Everybody couldn't put that together.
What what is the goal to continue that, or what do you want to do?
Trying to draw down the flying. Right now, I'm flying about 12 days a month, give or take. I'd like to cut that in half. I do enjoy flying airplanes, but the more I do it, the less I enjoy it. If that makes sense, the less I do it, the more I enjoy it.
Every time you tell me you're a pilot, I can only imagine in my mind that movie that came out with Denzel Washington where he like lands the plane upside down. That's all I think about when you're like, yeah, I'm a pilot. I'm like, oh, he does cocaine and drinks a lot.
Definitely don't do any of that stuff. There's a little bit of embellishing there.
Of course.
And maybe that was 3 decades ago. You might have something like that, but it's a different industry.
I prefer my version of the story. Just so we're clear.
It's definitely cooler. I'll say that.
Yeah.
It's got a lot more, appeal to it. So yeah, my job is pretty boring.
That's okay.
Believe it or not.
So Bobby, going from a couple million up to $10 million as far as raising private capital, there's a couple different approaches for it. I like to find groups of people that I know would have capital, and then kind of like an FBI agent or like James Bond, like infiltrate myself into their group. Over here, I've done that with like the Cigar Lounge. They have a membership only type of a gig. It's a couple grand a year. They've got the private bar, the cigar lockers, the whole thing. But, in my mind, the reason why I got a membership, it's not necessarily that I like cigars, but, this is probably people that have some money. So I have met like people on the mayor's team over there. I've met a lot of real estate investors, social media influencers that have money. And to me, that's a really good way to go. Often the same with like a country club. These are, I mean, I think of where do people that have money, where do they spend time? The other thing that I have found to be very effective, and we've seen people raise, it's got to be over 100 million at this point, is simply just educating people on what their options are. So most of the planet has absolutely zero clue, as an example, that they can lend against their 401k. You know, people get it, it's set it, forget it, it's out of sight, out of mind. They switch jobs. They don't know that because they no longer work at that job that they can convert that to a self-directed IRA. So a lot of times what I do is, when raising capital, is it's simply educate people. You know, social media, that type of a thing is normally the best thing to do. And with that comes, you never want to ask for money, but a lot of times if you ask for advice, you'll get people with money. So I think that can be really, really powerful. The other thing that I would suggest for you specifically is try to find some sort of a local self-directed IRA company. Most decent-sized cities are going to have some sort of a self-directed IRA or a Roth type of a company. A lot of times these guys will hold a meeting either monthly or even quarterly. It is normally open to everyone, but it's like every single person there is interested in one thing. They want to open, or they want information about their retirement, their 401k, their solo 401k, their IRA, whatever. They're all looking for information. So again, you kind of infiltrate this group like James Bond, and you know, maybe you got business cards, or maybe you're just shaking hands and just asking people, you know, hey, I mean, what's your goal? What are you trying to accomplish here? So a lot of times, just between those, you can make / find good money. The other thing that I did is online, because I worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I knew they had a 401k, and I knew they had a company match. I also know that the turnover with Enterprise Rent-A-Car is normally really high. So I found a Facebook group. It was like disgruntled Enterprise Rent-A-Car employees. And I just started talking shit about Enterprise. And everyone was like, ha ha ha, that's hilarious. You know, it's just kind of like everyone just kind of ragged on Enterprise. But as I started doing real estate deals, I kind of started sharing that a little bit, like life since Enterprise. And I would post a picture of me in front of a building or a property I was looking at or a property that I had previously invested in. And I started telling them, look, I got started in real estate partially by taking my 401k that was no longer active, converting it to self-directed, and then you can use that. It's use it or lose it, man. So like, people don't realize that if you don't work there anymore, you're not contributing, the company's not contributing. So it's just sitting idle until you retire. Well, I was 26 years old when I left Enterprise. That's a long time for that money just to be sitting there. Does that make sense?
Yep. I never thought of that.
So I'm assuming you didn't work at Enterprise, but it's kind of that same mindset of where do these people hang out? You know, is it somewhere physical? Is it online? Sometimes you can find like different forums. Like, it's that type of mindset. You're rich. You did it.
You've already got. Yeah, I did it. You got my wheels turning now on that. Let me ask you this: do you think that it would? And I'm much more of a visionary and not an integrator.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give? Because I've been really kind of kicking this around, but like as far as doing a CRM or tracking this, kind of developing a real process for, or do I just keep it relational? Because that's really where I tend to gravitate. So do you think that, as I'm getting into the point where I'm scaling, right, and I no longer have the same relationships where everybody knows Bobby. Now I'm getting to the point where people know of the guy, as opposed to having a direct relationship with him. do you think it makes sense to kind of systematize it? And did you or would you have any recommendations for that?
For clarity, are you talking about raising private capital, or are you talking about your real estate business? Which
No, I'm not talking about, no, not for lead generation. It would be lead generation, but it would be for private equity, effectively. So lead generation, follow-up management,
right?
that whole, you think there would be beneficial, would it be beneficial to do that, or is that kind of a waste of time? Do you think just focusing on kind of what you said, those strategic groups?
I think it's going to depend on volume. I mean, if you're talking to if you're talking to a bunch of people and you're handing out a bunch of business cards, and you want to list like a website that gives some information about what you do, great.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend something like, it's called Go High Level.
Mm-hmm.
It's like $100. It does everything. But if you wanted to direct people to a website where they could opt in to get more information, yeah, I think it's worth it. If you're making a post on Facebook and you're like, hey guys, if you want more information about what I'm doing and how you can leverage your 401k, here's where you can go get more information. That would create a automated system for you that is pretty hands-off. In fact, you could only really talk to people that were like super interested and had been like filtered or funneled. I think that's a good option. I think it's a good way to go. And you can set it up where they come in, you just got like a little bit about you, maybe talk about the storage unit stuff that you've done, maybe talk a little bit about the couple single families, talk about, these are different ways you can utilize your retirement, etc. So you can do that, and you can have it set up where it will automatically text them like a day later, hey, it's Bobby, flying the old plane over here. Looks like you were checking out the website. Do you have any questions for me? And if they don't respond, it waits another week. Hey man, it's Bobby, just checking in again. I know it's been about a week. Not sure if you had a chance to go through the information on the website. What did you think? So you can set it up where it automates that, and then if they respond to you, it goes to the next stage in your CRM or in your pipeline. And it'll notify you, hey Bobby, so-and-so has just texted you, give them a call back. So I think at that point it's probably worth it. I think people get overwhelmed and they try to make things really fancy. Like, oh my gosh, like I need a custom website design and a cool logo, and you don't need any of that shit. So, if you think it's worth like the $97 or $98 a month, I think that'd be a good way to automate it and free up some of your time.
Well, and it's not just time but bandwidth, because I'm as a visionary to ask me and slow down and follow a 72-step process is probably the most painful thing that you can do to me. That's not where I'm inclined. I'm definitely trying to move at speed at a high level all the time. I guess that's why I ended up being a pilot. I don't know. Could be. So.
Could be. Yeah, dude, I'm the same way. I don't like to slow down. I don't like to be stuck. I like to constantly be moving. The absolute worst time for me is the weekend.
Yeah.
Like everyone's off. No one's doing anything. Nobody's open, and like I get bored out of my mind. So I'm the same way, and I think the automations and stuff like that give me a pretty good handle on it.
I really appreciate that. Appreciate the recommendation.
Couple more things, man, and then I'll let you go here in a minute. But what market are you doing this in again?
It's my location would be Southern Indiana, Louisville.
Okay.
And I'm willing to expand that circle, especially for commercial stuff, because I'm becoming less attached to the area. If it's something small, it needs to be local, so I can put my current systems and processes, i.e. people, crews, things like that I've got to work. The larger the project, the simpler the decisions get too in some ways. So it's less about those specific connections that I have, in terms of who can do drywall, who can do paint, and then it's a lot more mathematical. So, but that's the area. As far as lending, I'm really open to any area. It would be kind of an asset-based relationship, and then finally a relational-based lending, to where somebody just says, "Hey, Bobby, I've got a property. I need XYZ dollars by such and such date. Can you help?" And then yes or no, and we just kind of move on from there. That would be the goal.
Well, there's two aspects to that. So there's two parts to that business. Yep. It would be the lending, or I'm sorry, the raising capital, which is international. Yep. You probably really don't care if it's coming from Louisville or Tennessee, right? I mean, that part exactly. That part's digital. Then, as far as investing that capital or even arbitraging that capital, arbitrage can also be digital. You can do that anywhere. Mm-hmm. If it's a physical property, you might want to get a little bit more specific. It depends on what the lender wants as well, right? Oh, right. I live in Canton, Ohio. I'd really prefer that the property's local. All right, well that's a different conversation, right? So there's multiple aspects to that.
Yep. That is something that is going to have to be kind of discussed with investors. Is if you want your money local, well, that's a different conversation. It's one of those that they're going to get price or terms. So yep. If they want to be local, then there's a price that has to come with that. And if they're willing to take on, I'll call it more risk. It's uncertainty. It's not exactly risk. It's just an unknown for them. Then I'm willing to pay more
100%.
Because that's going to free up their decision, and then they should be comfortable at that point with me. Hopefully, I've done my job at that point. So,
well, and that's the last thing that I was going to point out here really quick was, setting up a really quick landing page type of a thing, just a nice little profile picture of you, what you do, about you, etc. That also lends a lot to credibility. It shouldn't, especially in this industry, but it does. I can't tell you how many different people have, looked me up, not just on social, but, have seen that I have different websites, have seen that I've done different interviews and stuff like that. It's like, all right. And then every single time what people do is they Google, Bobby so-and-so scam, or Jordan Stanley Payne scam, or Kingdom Real Estate scam. So they're going to want to try to find you somewhere. So it kind of goes both ways. If they find you, great. There's nothing negative. If they can't find you, it's like red flags. This guy has like no paper trail. So it's something to consider, man. That alone might be worth it.
Sure.
Was this helpful?
That makes sense. Oh yeah, Jordan, tremendous. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time. Hopefully it serves others.
I'm sure it will, man. And you'll. I know it sounds weird, but it's actually easier to raise more money than it is to raise less money. So it's actually easier to raise $5 million than it is to raise $1 million, and it's easier to raise $20 million than it is to raise 10. It's really weird.
I agree.
Because people, I think most people think of it the opposite way. Like, man, like it's really hard to raise $50K. Well, probably because $50K for most legitimate investors is probably not worth it. But if you had a great deal and you're solving a problem for somebody that needs to place $50 million, and it's coming up towards the end of the year, you're solving a huge problem for them.
Yep. And a lot of people have that scarcity mindset where they're just thinking, how much is this going to cost, as opposed to what is this really worth to me? So
100%.
That $50,000 means a whole lot more to a smaller income family than those that are very affluent, right? So the decisions get to be a lot simpler for them, and it's worth their time to do it that way. So
I couldn't agree more. Right. All right, buddy. I appreciate you.
We'll see what happens. Thanks, Jordan.
All right, buddy.
All right.
Have a good one.
We'll catch up with you later. See you.
All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed what you just heard, and I hope you got value out of it. If you would like to continue the conversation and see if you might be a good fit for our community, there's a waitlist down below. Check it out. We'll get in touch with you as soon as we can. Have a great day.